Hi everybody, this is Noelle from Petitti's, and we're going to do a plant spotlight on perennial lilies today. There's actually two categories. One is blooming absolutely beautifully right now, and the other is sure to come on fairly close to it just because of the heat that we get in our summer months. So lilies, with perennial lilies, we want to make sure that you're successful with them. So lilies actually love to be in full sun to part shade conditions. They'll bloom very well in both of those conditions. So really you're looking at anywhere from 4 hours or more direct sunlight during the day. For soil, because they're a bulb plant, they have a true bulb, you want to look for your well-drained average soils. They can be slightly acidic, which kind of works in Northeast Ohio. Let's be real. So needless to say, lilies will grow very well for us as long as you're amending your clay soil, because if they have wet feet or stay wet too long, those bulbs will eventually rot in the soil. So you don't want that happening. So that's why you have to make sure that you're amending your soil with organic matter, your compost, your planting mixes, and go ahead and amend so you get good drainage. Also, in our area, we do plant a little bit higher, so you're usually keeping your plants up just about an inch or so above the soil level, the natural ground level, so that they do get that added drainage. So keep that in mind, especially for your lily family. I will have to say, feeding them, they're not heavy feeders by any means, so they will perform and produce the way that they should. You keep that foliage green and lovely, and typically we feed them with bulb tone. So you can use bulb tone once in the spring, once midsummer. That's it. You're really done with your lily feeding, and again, very easy growers here. Now, propagation wise with lilies, they are super easy to propagate. In fact, normally we would recommend that you can dig and divide them in the fall and then go ahead and replant. At that time, if you want to look at the bulb itself, when lily bulbs get more mature, they produce these kind of fattened scales on the outside of the bulb. And those scales can actually be removed and then planted, and we like to put them in the partial shade to start off with, like their first year or so, and they will fill out and will produce lilies for you. It might take a season or two for them to really come out and start budding and flowering well, but propagation by division and also scales is usually the most active growing, where you're going to get lilies pretty quickly from these plants. Okay, most of the varieties that we grow here are in the Lily Looks series, and this is a phenomenal lily series where they have bred wonderful cultivated varieties that stay rather short and very compact for a lily out there. Some lilies can grow a foot tall. Other lilies, not in the Lily Looks series, but other lilies can grow 6 feet tall. So with the Lily Looks, what they did is they bred these lilies with beautiful rainbow of colors, where you will find them anywhere between a foot to about 2 feet tall. So really nice in the garden, front border, middle border as well. And because they're so compact, they don't tend to flop over and dip over like some of the older lilies out there in the garden, okay? So let's talk about some varieties here with Lily Looks. Not only should I say that they produce these compact lilies, but also the flowers are very large, right around the 6-inch mark or larger. So they really are phenomenal. Most of the lilies that you see here are what we call an Asiatic type. Asiatic lilies, when they produce their lance leaf foliage first. The lance leaves are fairly narrow, usually about, I'd say about 3 to 4 inches long. And when they do produce their buds and their flowers, they are pointing up to the sky. So Asiatic lilies are typically more compact than an Oriental lily, let's say, or an Easter lily. But they will, as you can tell, all these flowers and flower buds are pointing straight up. Okay, now with all these compact varieties, there's so many different beautiful colors. So again, with the lily family, you can get a rainbow of colors in the garden, and really you can match or color contrast out there very, very easily in that sun or part shade garden. They are excellent for cut flowers, so if you do enjoy cut flowers in a vase, make sure you can cut the stems, no problem. Typically the flowers will last anywhere from 7 to 10 days in a vase typically. And go ahead and cut and then remove any of those leaves at the base of that stem so they're not in the water, and then go ahead and leave your flowers up above. Now, Lily Looks Asiatic lilies. There's Pearl here, which is a beautiful deep rosy pink. I have Ghost, which is kind of like a dark burgundy purple red, really, really gorgeous. This one here is Shadow. Shadow has a really unusual color. It's like a coral copper red, and then it has this dark, dark burgundy, almost eggplant purple in the center. So it really is a gorgeous plant. I love this contrast. This is Tiny Padhye, and Tiny Padhye has this beautiful maroon inner and then white outer tip petal. It's just a cool combination for lilies out there. You don't see these types of color combinations in a lot of different plant material. This is Golden Nugget, beautiful yellow with red freckles in it, absolutely gorgeous. This is, now I forgot this one, and Stella just brought it over to us. This is Epic. So look at that sort of peachy color, apricot creamy peach color. And then again, has that beautiful dark sort of burgundy purple center to it. Really, really unusual. This orange back here is one of the doubles. So if you look closely, the interior petals are like a shorter doubled, semi-doubled flower here. So this is called Double Dutch, Tiny Double Dutch. So that's pretty appropriate for that name. Absolutely love it. And this red here is Rocket. So if you're looking for a nice deep scarlet red, Rocket is absolutely gorgeous too. Now, just beyond the Asiatic lilies, this is an Oriental, and you can tell that the Oriental lilies have a different growth habit to them. They also have much thicker foliage. It still is a lance-shaped leaf here. Again, probably about 3, 4, maybe up to 5 inches long, a little bit thicker or wider with this leaf. And with the Oriental lilies, you can tell as they're budding here, the buds kind of come out to the sides of the plant material. So when Oriental lilies open, they open into a large star. Those flowers tend to be probably about twice the size of the Asiatic lilies. And that star will open. There are doubled varieties of the stars as well, and Taylor will show you some of the Oriental lilies, but they are typically very perfumey. With the Asiatics, you don't get much fragrance or at all really, but the Orientals, you get a ton of fragrance from them. And they're very, very showy. They usually have a star pattern inside. Most of them are typically bicolor. They're usually in the whites, the pinks, light yellows, those types of colors, but really gorgeous. And you can tell just slightly taller here, probably around the 2-foot mark, perhaps a little bit taller than that when they're full grown and filling out. Just remember with lilies, the taller they are, the more protection they need as far as wind and also staking. So do remember that you want to get your stakes or your cages out. Typically with the Lily Looks lilies, we don't have any problems with them flopping over just because the habit is so compact. So it's really not a problem. And again, cut flower wise, you can't go wrong with a lily. I should mention with lilies also another little tip for them is trying to keep them cooler. If you can keep them in a partially shaded area or an eastern exposure where you get morning sun, evening shade, that's really great for them because that will make them last longer and flower longer in your garden. So cooler they can stay, that's great. Also applying mulch around the lilies will help keep that soil obviously moist, but also keep it cooler so that the bulbs don't overheat. So that's something to keep in mind as well. They really do prolong their flowering life if you can keep them on the cooler side. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I wanted to show you just a really important tip with lilies, and Taylor will show you close up here in a moment. But with lilies, what you want to do is you want to make sure that they are planted, the bulbs themselves are planted at least 2 inches below your soil level. The reason being is they develop roots from the stem of the plant that will help anchor the lily into the soil. And those stem roots will also help absorb additional moisture and also additional nutrients to put into the lily system. So that depth, you'd really do want to make sure, like you plant tomatoes a little bit deeper in the soil so the stem is underneath the soil level. It's the same thing with lilies. So make sure that you're planting them a little bit deeper when you're installing them, at least 2 inches deep, so they do develop those stem roots, and that really ultimately helps them grow and flower better for you. So keep that in mind. Other than that, lilies' attributes, as you can tell, they're very reliable bloomers. They're very long-lived. They're excellent in cutting gardens, cottage gardens as well. Unfortunately, they have absolutely no deer resistance whatsoever. You'll get some bunny damage on these guys too. So if you do have those issues, which a lot of us do, you want to make sure that you're protecting them. And of course, you can do that with your spray repellents like Plant Skid. You can also put netting around them. So something to keep in mind for the summer garden, lots of colors, lots of flowering, just absolutely gorgeous. And I should mention that they pair so well with different types of foliage plants, all the different types of coral bells or heuchera. They look gorgeous paired with heuchera. They also look beautiful with your artemisias. So those are things like silver mound artemisia or even Powys Castle. They're upright growing. They really kind of complement each other in that beautiful silvery foliage. And then if you have a hot colored lily, they look absolutely gorgeous together. Even a pastel colored lily, they look great together as well. Enjoy.